Has anyone ever wondered why HaShem allowed Avraham to go into Egypt not once but twice in order to escape a drought in Canaan? He also allowed Jacob and his clan of 70 people to do the same when a very serious 7-year drought struck not only the land of Israel but throughout the region to enter Egypt, where, thanks to its viceroy, who was actually his son Joseph, that land, also struck by the drought, was well supplied with grain and foodstuffs. However, when another drought hit the area, when Isaac, the son of Avraham and the father of Jacob, was around as the patriarch of our people, HaShem forbade him from leaving the land and ensured that he and his growing clan was well cared for. In fact, Isaac prospered even in the midst of the drought. Why was that, do you think? Is there a reason why HaShem couldn't or wouldn't do for Avraham and Jacob what he did for Isaac? Why was it necessary for Avraham and Jacob in their respective time periods have to go to Egypt, and in Jacob's case, his people stay there and die there for nearly 400 years? These questions are not new. Our sages have battled and addressed them down through the ages. Let's take a look at some of their answers to these inquiries. At the end of this, I would love to see your comments and thoughts on them as well. You can leave them below or contact me directly via email to shmu@startmail.com. Okay, let's get into it, shall we? Avraham's descent to Egypt was the beginning of the Maaseh Avot Siman Labanim. The deeds of the fathers are a sign for the children. In Bereshit Rabbah 40 verse 6, the Midrash says, Avraham's journey foreshadowed the future exile and redemption of his descendants. Whatever happened to Avraham was a prototype. His going down to Egypt predicted his descendants going down to Egypt. This isn't metaphor. Chazal say the parallels were intentionally engineered by HaShem. The Ramban on Genesis 12 verse 10 states openly that HaShem wanted Avraham to experience the pattern of exile, suffering, redemption. The famines were the triggering device. The trip to Egypt was part of a divine plan, not a personal failure of our fathers or the whim of HaShem. Avraham had not yet been forbidden to leave. Chazal emphasized that Avraham's command, Lech Lecha, go for yourself, didn't include a prohibition to remain in the land. Only his son Isaac receives that explicit restriction. So, Avraham was allowed because his role required the prototype of exile. Why was Isaac forbidden to leave? Remember that life-changing event that took place in his life up on Mount Moriah? Isaac was a Korban Olah, uniquely holy. Rashi, commenting on Genesis 26 verse 2, summarized Midrash Tanchuma and Bereshit Rabbah. After the Akedah, Isaac was considered like a Korban Olah Temima, one who is wholly consecrated. A sacrifice cannot leave the holy ground designated for it. Egypt was spiritually impure. Isaac stepping foot there would violate his elevated status. Isaac's holiness literally affects the land around him. Talmud Pesachim 88a clearly states that the holiness of a tzaddik can elevate a place. Isaac's presence sanctified the land, and HaShem ensured prosperity even during famine. So HaShem didn't need to send Isaac to Egypt. The land flourished around him. Why was Jacob, now called Israel, allowed and even guided to Egypt? Egypt was the fulfillment of the Bris Ben HaBetarim, the covenant between the pieces that occurred all those years earlier between HaShem and Avraham. In Bereshit Rabbah 89 verse 3, the Chazal explicitly connect Jacob's descent with the decree HaShem gave Avraham. Your descendants will be strangers in a land not theirs. Genesis 15 verse 13. Jacob's going was the moment the covenant lock clicked into place. If we remember, it was Jacob taking a lesson from his father that wanted to avoid Egypt, but HaShem reassured him. Talmud Shabbat 89b says Jacob feared fulfilling the prophecy of exile. HaShem directly appeared to him, Genesis 46 verses 3 and 4, because Jacob would not have gone voluntarily. This wasn't a coincidence. It was destiny. Egypt was the refining furnace for the children of Israel. In Megillah 29a, HaShem sometimes exiles Israel so they emerge stronger, purified, and ready for destiny. Egypt is called the Kur Habarzel, the iron furnace, Deuteronomy 4 verse 20. Chazal view Egypt as the spiritual womb where the nation of Israel was forged from a loose band of 12 tribes in exile to a nation of 12 states. Joseph as viceroy wasn't luck, it was orchestration. Barakot 4b teaches, everything Joseph endured was a chain leading to Jacob's descent. The sages emphasize that HaShem arranged the famine and Joseph's rise for one goal, to bring the family to Egypt when the prophecy required it. Why didn't HaShem do for Avraham and Jacob what he did for Isaac? In summary, we find the answers in Talmudic Midrashic principles. Isaac's unique kedusha, his korban status, made his presence in the land necessary and his leaving impermissible. This is the most explicit halakhic explanation in Chazal. But Avraham and Jacob had different missions. Ma'aseh Avat Siman Labanim reveal that both Avraham and Jacob needed to model exile and redemption. Isaac needed to model holiness in the land. Egypt was necessary for the creation of the Israelite nation. In Pesikta Rabbati 15, we learn that Israel needed to experience oppression so that faith could be strengthened. Empathy for the stranger and animals would be written into their spiritual DNA, and Hashem's power would be revealed through a dramatic redemption. Isaac's era wasn't the right time for national formation. That leads us to the final question. Why the 400 years? Why death in Egypt? The Chazal teach that the 400 years were not just punishment, but more importantly, they were preparation. Rosh Hashanah 11a says the 400 years began with the birth of Isaac, meaning the actual time in Egypt was much shorter, but still essential, a little over 200 years. The suffering forged unity, identity, and the spiritual resilience needed for Sinai. Sota 11a. Israel grows spiritually when surrounded by moral and spiritual contrast. Egypt's impurity was the perfect contrast for Israel's mission. Bereshit Rabbah 94 verse 9. It must be understood that at that time, Egypt was the superpower of the world. Its influence and idolatrous lifestyle was invasive and infectious. The Israeli people had to experience Egypt to reject it. The Zohar says Israel could not become a covenant nation until they saw, understood, and turned away from the worst of ancient pagan civilization. You don't learn monotheism in a vacuum. In short, the Talmudic answer to our questions is Avraham went because the pattern had to begin. Jacob went because the prophecy had to be fulfilled. Isaac stayed because holiness demanded it. Egypt was the furnace where the nation of Israel was born. Each patriarch had a different divine assignment, and Chazal mapped that out very clearly. Leave your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. Please like, subscribe, and share this with others. All my works can be found on Rumble, YouTube, Locals, Substack, and Blogger. Until next time, this is Shmuel ben Shlomi of Shmu's Views, wishing you a Shabbat Shalom.